Hi, I'm Fiona Solomon, the CEO of the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative. In this 15-minute webinar, I'd like to give you a brief introduction to our history, our current activities, and our overarching goals. I thought I'd start with a bit of a brief history on ASI, the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative. It's actually been an initiative that's been growing in momentum for a number of years. It first started back in 2009 when a variety of stakeholders came together to think about how the concept of responsible aluminium could be addressed. A study was commissioned by a consultant who looked at what other sectors had done on the issues of responsible production, responsible metals, and they recommended that a third-party certification system be established. A subset of those stakeholders agreed to come together to develop the work program that resulted in the ASI, IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, spent 2 years as the coordinator of a multi-stakeholder standard setting process, which resulted in the first version of a performance standard being published, which you might have seen. I came on board in 2015 and we set in place two main areas of work. Firstly, incorporating ASI as a legal entity and developing its governance model, and also developing the model of how a certification program would actually work. And we successfully launched that at the end of last year in December 2017. The vision and mission of ASI is very broad and really focuses on aluminium as a metal and what it can do both through the value chain and for society as a whole. So the vision of ASI is to maximise the contribution of aluminium to a sustainable society, and the way we seek to try and do that is by recognising and collaboratively fostering responsible production, responsible sourcing and stewardship of aluminium right through the value chain. We've really grown our membership over the years since we've incorporated, and we've currently, as I record this in early July, we have 63 members across the value chain. The ones that are circled there are what we call our industrial user members. We also have what we call production and transformation members, and both these kinds of members are the ones that seek certification against the ASI performance standard. And we actually already, as of end of June, have some certifications that have come through the system, which is really exciting. So Rio Tinto were the first to achieve some certifications, both against the performance standard in their Canadian Quebec operations and a bauxite mine in Gove, Australia. And Constantia Flexible was the first aluminium foil roller company to become certified based out of Europe. So aluminium or even metals are not the only sectors that have developed programs to try and address sustainability through either at the production end or through the value chain. And we're seeing that these kinds of sustainability standards are increasingly prevalent in a wide range of sectors and tackling different kinds of issues within those. They really first emerged in the agriculture sector and sectors like forests, fisheries, in tea, coffee and cocoa, and they were looking particularly at the point of production, so the forest itself or the fishery or the tea plantation, and looking perhaps at labour or environmental or both kinds of issues that might be taking place in those activities. After the agriculture sector, mining started to become involved in these kinds of programs, and there were topic-specific programs that were developed, such as the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, the Voluntary Principles on Security and Human Rights, or even the Global Reporting Initiative, which had a mining sector supplement and focused on key risks and issues there. Programs then started to develop for particular commodities, gold being a predominant one. So organisations like the Responsible Jewellery Council developed with a whole of value chain certification program quite similar to the one ASI has developed, and programs within the OECD looking at due diligence in supply chains, particularly where there were risks of conflict or risks of adverse human rights abuses. And then there are also at the downstream end sustainability standards that look at either the design of building or sourcing kind of material. And so things like green building certification programs are a good example of that. And of course, they go well beyond the ones I've just talked about here. And all of these standards and certification programs aim to do pretty similar kinds of things. They can help companies to attain their social and environmental objectives. So if companies are looking to improve performance on social and or environmental issues, they can provide a really good roadmap or a framework for what stakeholders are expecting in terms of performance. These initiatives like ASI can help actually build consensus across different stakeholder groups on what those responsible practices should be, taking into account what key risks or issues are and what are feasible or best practice approaches to address them. For those programs like ASI that involve independent assurance, that can give some confidence to customers about what the systems and performance of a company are, similar to the way ISO certification works, for example, against various ISO standards. In some cases, standards and certification programs can help support relevant regulatory requirements or compliance expectations of customers, and things like the OECD due diligence guidance are a good example of that, where it's providing a mechanism for where conflict minerals issues are being brought in legislation, which we have seen in the US and the EU. These kinds of multi-stakeholder and industry programs can help provide a consistent way of evidencing how those are being met. The other point, of course, about standardization is that standards help to reduce duplication of effort. If all parties within a value chain agree that something like ASI is a good standard to work towards, it avoids a scenario where different customers are asking for different things and you have to provide that evidence or have ways of proving how performance is being met. Standardization means that everybody's looking for the same kinds of outcomes, and that simplifies those sorts of processes. And finally, certification programs help to support responsible sourcing activities, and for those that are at the end of the value chain, help them to better understand what kinds of risks are in value chains and to de-risk those. Overall, these work together to help create market drivers for change and for positive impact in global supply chains. So that's not just us sort of thinking that. There's been a fair amount of research looking at, do these programs actually deliver benefits? And this slide tries to capture some of the business case analyses in numbers. The kinds of things that people look for when they participate in a certification program is looking as to whether there might be a premium on the price of a product that they're selling, a way to manage risk. It might increase access to finance. Often it improves business operations by identifying gaps that can be fixed, risks that can be reduced, efficiencies that can be gained, and often they help to improve market access. And all of these things can help contribute to increased profitability, increased reputation, and reduction of costs. And this research was conducted by the ICL Alliance last year. The ICL Alliance is an association for a number of different sustainability systems and standards programs across multiple sectors. So ASI members have joined from a variety of different parts and different sectors that deal with aluminium, both from the upstream part of the supply chain right through to consumer-facing brands that use aluminium in their products. And we have here a couple of quotes from ASI members, one from Emirates Global Aluminium, that talk about why they've joined ASI, and they see it as something that builds on work they've been doing for many years, building a business that is financially, environmentally and socially sustainable, and that joining ASI helps to extend that journey. Likewise, from Apple, their phones are one of the more iconic products that have a visible element of aluminium with their enclosures, with the covers of the phone. And they see being part of the ASI as a way to extend that commitment. So we have companies that are already doing good things and feel that this becomes a way to come together with other stakeholders and think how to extend that and to drive that further. And that's a really exciting part of being part of the ASI community. So ASI starts its focus from the bauxite mining phase right through alumina production, alumina refining, primary smelting, semi-fabrication, product manufacture, the use, and then obviously bringing back into the secondary cycle, collection of scrap and refining and remelting of scrap through secondary production of aluminium. bringing into play that whole circular economy type model. ASI standards cover each of these parts of the value chain, each of these stages, and there are some aspects within the standards that are specific for mining, for example, or for refining and bauxite residue, or for emissions relating to primary smelting and greenhouse gas emissions, for example. So when the first version of the ASI performance standard was developed, a number of priority issues were identified, and these have been called hotspot issues within the standard. At the upstream end, so with bauxite mining and alumina and aluminium production, issues around biodiversity management and Indigenous peoples' rights were seen as some of the key issues that face aluminium production upstream. Moving into the processing stages, alumina refining and smelting, we see greenhouse gas emissions, particularly for smelting, as a key issue, and then also specific waste such as bauxite residue, spent pot lining and dross that emerge from those stages as well. And then moving more downstream with semi-fabrication, product manufacturing, recycling, that's where the focus on material stewardship is really strong within the ASI standards. So our standards have been set out, and as I mentioned, were launched in December 2017. And we have two standards. We have a performance standard, which covers those kinds of sustainability issues that we just talked about, and is supported by a guidance document that's quite extensive and that talks about how implementation can be achieved by different kinds of businesses at different stages of the value chain, and also thinks about small business and what it might mean for a small business to start to implement better practices in some of these areas. The second standard that we have is what's called a chain of custody standard, and it is around the flow of material through the value chain. So the performance standard is looking at the practices that a particular company or a particular site would have, and then the chain of custody standard is an additional voluntary standard that can be done that once certification's achieved against that standard would allow a company to carry forward its claims about performance and effectively apply it to the metal or the aluminium production that it has. And so that's a really important way that responsible sourcing can be supported, so that the practices of each step of the supply chain are supported by a view of how that material flows through the supply chain. Importantly, ASI doesn't require segregation of material right through the supply chain in its chain of custody standard, and it's designed to try and be flexible in its implementation so as to support uptake. Because ultimately the key point is to see those practices in the performance standard being applied as much as possible globally through that value chain. The third set of documents there relate to how assurance works. So that's how audits take place, how member companies would prepare for audits, what gets reported. It sets all of that stuff out in quite a lot of detail and takes people through the whole process of achieving certification. The other one, of course, is once certified or even once a member, what kind of claims can companies make about being part of ASI, or once they're certified, what does this enable you to say? And the ASI Claims Guide covers that as well. One other really important piece of the ASI program that we've developed is what we call our assurance platform, Elemental. It's an online program that for member companies, when you join ASI, you get an account into Elemental, and you can have as many people within the company within that account. And it enables you to start what's called a self-assessment to prepare for certification against one or both of the ASI standards. It takes you through what's applicable to your kind of company, how you would demonstrate conformance with the standards, the kinds of objective evidence, as we call it, that would show that you meet the requirements of those parts of the standard that apply to you. And within there, we also have a help desk, different training materials available, access to all of the standards in the guidance document that take you through to the section that's relevant to the bit that you're looking at. So the whole thing is designed to digitize the process as much as possible and help you navigate through it and give you quick access to what you need as you go through each step. So in summary, I hope I've been able to give you a little bit of a snapshot into the Aluminium Stewardship Initiative, its history and its objectives. And here's some key takeaways that I wanted to make sure you shared. Firstly, we're a global initiative, we're a multi-stakeholder initiative, and we're really focused on some of those core sustainability issues that we covered earlier. We always are welcoming new members, and we welcome them from all parts of the aluminium value chain, from upstream right through to downstream sectors. We have 2 standards, the performance standard and the chain of custody standard, and we touched a little bit on those, but of course they're also available on our website, so feel free to go and find out more and dig a little deeper into those. And certification against these standards helps to provide third-party assurance of a company's performance to their customers and of course to stakeholders more broadly. ASI, our secretariat, we provide support to members on their certification journey, we provide training, and we also have our online assurance platform, Elemental, that helps to, as we talked about, take people through that certification journey. And through all of their collective efforts, ASI members are really working together to enhance the contributions of aluminium to a more sustainable world. It's an exciting time to become part of it. And if you're interested in more information, please don't hesitate to get in touch. My contact details are there, our website as well. And you're very welcome to join our mailing list. We have a monthly newsletter which can keep you up to date in all that we have going on at ASI. I wish you an enjoyable conference. I apologise that I couldn't be there in person, and I look forward to seeing many of you at a future event. Thank you.